Why, hello, and welcome to this really exciting interview that I have for you today. On deck, I'm really happy to introduce you to real estate investor, actually, real estate guru, Robert Foel. Now, Robert is an author, he's a teacher, he's a motivational speaker, and a life coach. And we're going to chat today about his brand new book. Robert, welcome to our interview today. What is the name of your book?
Daniel, thank you so much for having me. It's so fantastic to be here. I've been so excited for this. The name of my book that was just released is called The Short Term Retirement Program. And it's a book on real estate investing. It's subtitled Break Out of Your Financial Prison, which is a little moniker myself and the publishing team put together because that's what the book is really designed for, as we'll talk about. It's called the Short Term Retirement Program. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here with you. I'm really honored to be on the program.
It is our privilege, Robert. I really appreciate what you're doing for folks in the community to help build their financial life. So let's actually talk about that. What in fact inspired you to write this book, Robert?
Well, I've been in real estate. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I started, I grew up in a single parent home, and it was just me and my mom and my sister, and my grandmother who moved in with us. And money was a five-letter word that was never spoken. So, I was really focused on trying to do everything right, as I think so many of us are. Go to school and get good grades. And then I went to college, and I studied aggressively in college. I was a triple major in college where I graduated and, did very well academically. And I worked all through college, putting myself through college. And then I went and got my master's degree, and I have a background in teaching. I was a school teacher for many years, originally in upstate New York, and then I also taught in Memphis, where I've lived for the past 20 years, for many years. And one thing I found was that it was, even though I was doing the things that everybody told me to do, going to work every day and then working a second job, and I ended up living paycheck to paycheck. I bought a house, and I was still living paycheck to paycheck, and all these things. And finally, I started to think about the nature of the things we were told, the fact that all the teachers, all the people that worked with me were also living paycheck to paycheck. We've all gone to school, we've all got our master's degree, we're all teaching at good schools, getting good salaries, and at the end of the month, there just wasn't that much money left over. And that started me on a journey that really descended into getting into the real estate world as a beginner I want to say about 15 years ago, and really starting to look at, what are people in real estate doing? How are they becoming wealthy? How can real estate make you wealthy or not make you wealthy? How can it make you go broke? Because a lot of people go broke doing real estate. And that was kind of, as I got out of teaching, I started to get into real estate full time. And I went on my journey, my path there. I started to discover that the people who are wealthy were using real estate to become wealthy. And yes, you can buy and sell houses and make larger sums of money than if you're buying and selling, a carton of milk at the grocery store, for example. But I also started to realize that those same people who were becoming wealthy had a very similar set of skills and applications they were doing. Example, a lot of them weren't using 30-year loans in their primary residences and so forth, which struck me as strange because everybody uses 30-year loans. And in summary, what I found was there was a lot of information that I could summarize as follows. Almost every person in America today who's working and going to their job is doing everything that we've been told to do, and we think we're doing everything right. But there's wealth and finance secrets, specifically related to real estate and structuring your bills, where what we're really doing is everything wrong. And that's what the book is about. That was why I wrote it. I had a little bit of divine inspiration that we may or may not talk about here on the interview, but it was really, I designed it as a handbook for people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they just wake up one day. And you'll have to excuse me here as I will immediately silence that. And what happens is at the end of the day, if you have to change the way you're doing things. So that's why I wrote the book. It's really about a manual on how to undo the things that you're doing that we think are right and then start doing things that are absolutely right.
Cool. So when you sat down to write this book, essentially you're drawing from what you learned as a real estate investor yourself.
Well, yes, I am. And I started out in real estate the way most people do. I started out by thinking, and I tell this story a lot in seminars, and I think it's important. Originally, I thought my retirement plan was going to be this: I was going to work as a teacher for 30 years and then retire and get a pension. And I thought over the span of 10 years, I'm going to buy 10 duplexes. And if you don't know what a duplex it is, it's a multifamily home that has two apartments. And I thought over the 30 years, I'll buy and pay off 10 duplexes. And then when I'm in my 50s or 60s, I'll retire. And originally that was how I started. But what I found was when you're buying real estate for rentals and you're putting them on 30-year loans, it takes forever to be financially free. So I got into real estate full time. I started working full time for some local investors here, and I became a rental agent. I was renting homes and seeing what other investors were doing. And what I found was that there's a big principle of the book, and I've learned this a lot from real estate investing, is everybody thinks that 30-year loans are great. Everybody thinks they're the most affordable instrument of financing something like a big purchase, like a home for 30 years, because it's the lowest payment. But what I found by watching these other investors is they weren't really getting ahead. They were buying houses on 30-year loans, and it was and their house would rent for a year, and then somebody would move out and they'd have to pay some money, which was their profit for the year, to get the house ready for the next tenant, and then they would rent it again, and they do this for 4 or 5 years. And I saw these guys, they just weren't getting anywhere. The 30-year note just takes forever to pay off, and it made me start thinking about uh, the average American homeowner and how most Americans who own homes, they get 30-year loans. But I started to research it, and based on what I researched, the average American moves and changes residence every 5 years. So for most people, you are buying a home. People who choose to buy homes, they buy 30-year loans. They buy homes, they get 30-year loans, but they move every 5 years, and they haven't made very much financial headway. And this is something that I talk about in the book, and my real estate experience has really wrapped up for me and encapsulated in the text, is that it's very difficult, Daniel, to succeed if your goal is to be financially independent by buying any home using a 30-year loan. And that's a really important fact I stress in the book, I emphasize in the book, and there's a lot of mathematics and other amortization schedules in there that will show to a reader who wants to learn why we're encouraged to get these loans. But this is how people start in their 20s, and then they refinance again in their 30s, they get in their 40s, and they feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck, not getting anywhere. So it's important stuff, and I'm really glad you asked. I feel like it's one of the founding cornerstones of the text, and really kind of an awakening, I think, if most people pick up the book to
So
find that out.
let me ask you this. Why is it that 30-year loans are so bad?
That's an excellent question. And Daniel, I'm assuming we talked a little bit before the interview. I mean, you've got some kids. I don't know if you're married or not, but I'm married. I have three young children, including a special needs son. And most people think that the best place to go when you're getting when you're buying a house is to go to a mortgage broker like Quicken Loans, or go to your banker. Most people go to your banker, and they'll say, you know, hey, Mr. Banker, what am I going to do to finance this? I want to buy a house. It's $100,000, and I don't have $100,000 saved up, so I need a loan. Can you give me one? And they look at their credit, and what they'll do is they'll say, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your tax returns, and let's say somebody makes $50,000 a year, right, which is about the average salary for a working American. They're going to take it and they're going to say, well, you can afford up to 3 times of your salary, roughly, using what they call a Fannie Mae loan product, and they're going to put you in a loan that is $150,000, and that's going to take about 40% of your income. So your question is, what makes 30-year loans so bad? And this is the problem. The problem is your average American worker, they go and they work and they give about half of their paycheck to tax, what we call well, your federal withholding tax, and then there's usually another 15% of their check, which adds to the 50%, which is Social Security tax. So let's just say, for even numbers, about half of their paycheck, every paycheck is gone in taxes and Social Security. And then what the banker does with the 30-year loan is they take 40% of the take home pay that's left, and they say, look, you can give 40% of your check to your home payment. Well, that sounds great until the loan closes. And what happens is half of the check gross goes to taxes, and then 40%, which is, let's call it close to 50% of their take home pay every month, goes to a mortgage. Well, most people have experienced this in the sense that they generally get 2 checks a month on the 15th and the 30th, and their first check goes towards their home loan. So, what is wrong with that? The problem with that is that the 30-year loan starts paying more principal than interest at the start of year 21, which means for 20 years, those people are taking half of their take home pay and they're giving it away almost exclusively to mortgage interest, which is just like giving it back to the bank. They make very little headway. And Daniel, I'll say this. I tell this in seminars a lot. I'll say, hey, listen, if you have a $100,000 mortgage and your mortgage payment, let's just call it $1,000 a month. After your first 12 months, you've paid $1,000 a month, which is $12,000. What do you think your mortgage balance is if you have a 30-year loan and you start with 100,000 and you pay $12,000 of it? And people in the seminars say, they all raise their hand and say 88,000, about 88,000. But the truth of the matter is they still owe about $99,500. And that math, a lot of people, they don't understand it, why it works, how the bank, what they call the compound interest algorithm, works for the bank. But what it comes down to is so many people get trapped with these 30-year loans, and it really makes it very, very difficult because they don't get equity in the home. They're just paying the bank interest. And if they move every 5 years, like statistically they do, they almost lose money on the home. And this is one of the reasons we talk about it in the book. We really drill down to discover and discuss how can you change the game so that you can win with every mortgage payment that you make, so that you can have your house paid off in 15, 10, 7, or even as little as 5 years, as I show in the book. And we're really excited about the fact that we've taken some information that people think is impossible and put it into a very achievable formula. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because one of the things that so if 30-year mortgages are bad, what should people do instead?
Sure, that's a fantastic question, and let me tell you how I'm going to answer that. Um, let's say that, and it's very common. This happens a lot. Let's take any neighborhood in America that is not San Diego or Seattle, something that is has New York City, for example. Let's eliminate those economies because properties are really expensive there, due to a variety of factors that it's not worth getting into here. We know it's expensive in the California coast, all the way up and down the West Coast. It's obviously expensive in Manhattan. But if you take a place like Memphis, well, most people who go to their banker, they can get a 30-year loan for, let's just use $100,000 for easy math. And what they do is they go shopping and they buy a house and it's 100,000, or frequently it's more. Frequently they might say to their banker, "Well, we found this house, but it's 125. Can you help us qualify?" And he's like, "Well, I can squeak this in," and they add more debt to the ledger, and they paid retail. But what I encourage people to do is do what I've done. And the way that I started to really get ahead financially, and this is a great way for a lot of people to start, especially in today's economy with things like Airbnb, is let's say that you wanted to shop in your $100,000 neighborhood. Well, if you insist on being in that neighborhood, don't buy the $100,000 house in the neighborhood that's beautiful. Buy the $40,000 house that, with a little bit of fix up, like $10,000 or $15,000, is worth the $100,000 house. That's step one. So, buy a foreclosure, find a motivated seller, find a distressed seller, use some seller financing versus a bank, which is where a private seller can hold a mortgage for you. I talk heavily about this in the very first chapter of the book. Um, a lot of people aren't aware about seller financing, and that is a critical part of the book, talking about creative ways where you can buy a house, even if your credit is terrible, even if you had a recent bankruptcy. These imprisoning factors that the bankers tell us are roadblocks to our financial success are really just speed bumps, in my opinion. And another way to do it, and I'll just talk briefly about this because the book goes in great detail, and I did this, is the use of Airbnb today has become so common, so safe, and so lucrative. If you think outside the box, a lot of people just want to go buy a single family home, and that's fine. If you want to do that, we talk about techniques. If you are married and have children and you don't really want to think about leasing a room in your home or having what we call like a mother-in-law suite, that's fine. But there's a lot of people, a lot of readers of the book, and a lot of my students, coaching students and real estate investing students, have really taken advantage of thinking outside the box and buying homes, and either making some renovations architecturally to allow a mother-in-law suite with a separate entrance, or a little bit of what we call in the Memphis a carriage house, which is a guest house in the back. And excuse me, and being able to lease that out using an Airbnb model, or if you're in a historic district of New Orleans, maybe a vacation rental by owner model, and generating $2 or $3 or $4,000 a month in revenue, and then taking that revenue. That's part A. Part A is getting the revenue, and then part B is you didn't sign on for a 30-year note. You structured a 15-year note or a 10-year note or a 5-year note, and then making aggressive payments using this surplus overage of cash that you generated, and having your house paid off in as little as 5 years. It's the way of the new rich, because everybody who works, what is their biggest payment? It's always housing. And the U.S. Department of Housing talks about these statistics all the time, that such a large fractional percentage of people's take-home pay goes to housing. And every one of those people in a 30-year loan, almost without exception, statistically, I would say 80% or more, are still in the first 5 years of their 30-year loans throwing away 50% of their take-home pay. It's not a sustainable model, and this is why CNN and other news media reports that 76% of Americans don't have even $500 of discretionary disposable income in a checking account for emergencies. And that same 76% is overwhelmingly living, by their own definition, paycheck to paycheck. It's a calamity. And the only way we're going to get out of it is through sound financial education, and by turning your biggest payment, as I talk about in the book, to your smallest payment, which is either zero or getting paid by other people after your mortgage is paid, and putting the money in your own pocket. And it's very easy to do. It's a very outside the box approach. It's a very radical approach, but it's one I can take anyone today who has a 30-year loan and significant debt, and I can get them restructured into an outside the box type investment like this for their primary residence, and they can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel within a few short years versus what is essentially a lifetime. It's very encouraging, and that's one of the things about the book that we like is that it has a very positive approach to getting out of debt versus a lot of these books, which is like you signed yourself into debt. This is terrible. You're never going to get out. Let's chop your paycheck into 15 different, fractional reserve accounts, and let's try to, attack these credit cards. It's like you can really get ahead by leveraging your primary residence. The book isn't about developing a real estate empire. It's about getting your primary residence paid off and then just breathing and being able to breathe a sigh of relief each month. So that's really what it's focused on. And we're getting a lot of great feedback, even though it's only been out for a week, from people who have actually gotten the book. It's been encouraging.
Yeah, man. And let's actually tell folks as we sort of wrap up here today, Robert, where can they get the book?
It's available on Amazon, and we're very excited about that. It's called The Short-Term Retirement Program: Break Out of Your Financial Prison. We kept it very cheap. Now it's over 400 pages, Daniel, which I'm really excited about. I did get my first proof copy in the mail, and my wife opened it, and she didn't. It was so heavy, she didn't even think that it was the book. She's like, I didn't realize how thick this was. It's filled with charts and graphs, amortization tables, case studies. It talks a lot about personal transactions that I've done. And it's really designed for people regardless of where you are financially. If you have great credit and you're looking to get into a different type of, well, we talk about changing zip codes in the world of real estate investing, get to a better neighborhood, get to a better financially stable place through real estate, that's fine. But it's also, if you're saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt and you've declared a bankruptcy, maybe you have unbankruptable student loans, you're swimming in credit card debt, there's strategies in there how to leverage these undervalued assets that are right in your area where you can find them, and we talk about that, and really get on the path to recovery. So it's for everybody. If you just are saying to yourself, I want to get to a better place financially, I don't know what to do, I don't have money to go take and put in the stock market and pray. How can I do it? That's what this book is about. And we're really proud about how intensely thick it is, kind of the way that it's been written. I kind of wrote it as for lack of a better word, I don't know if this word exists in the publishing industry, but a self-help textbook of sorts that, you might read in college, but it's a very easy read.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Robert, thank you so much for actually taking the time to chat with me about it. For everyone that's interested in having a better life, okay, and especially a better financial life, I am going to highly recommend and commend this book to you, The Short-Term Retirement Program. It's out on Amazon and basically wherever books are sold. So if you go to your library, ask for it. Go wherever else you buy books. You can get it there, or you could order it there. So with that, Robert, thank you so much for taking the time, and go grab the Short-Term Retirement Program. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Cool, man. And we are out.
Great. How was it? Was it good energy?
Yeah, it was good. It was good energy. Let's one of the things, if you are open to some feedback.
Absolutely.
Let me give you some feedback. We want to help you grow into delivering concise, quotable sentences.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a bit of meandering, through and not really getting to a point. There's a couple times that only happened a couple times, but you would, when you're asked a question, you want to snap to the point, get the point out first, then go back and explain. Then go on to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, because that's what people are actually listening for. But and you did that, but it could be done better.
Of course.
Yeah. And yeah. We do need to work on a much more concise explanation, especially since it's such a linchpin of your book, of why the 30-year notes are so bad.
Would I condense it into like a 60-second summary or something? I can work on it, or what?
Well, I would even make it less than 60 seconds.
Okay.
I would make it like 2 sentences.
I'd be like, well, in a nutshell, Daniel, the 30-year loan. 76% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Media companies report this, and I found in my research, and you can read about this in the book, the 30-year loan is really the instrument of their destruction, or something like that.
Yes,
but maybe not with a negative slant.
Well, you can use the negative, but because it's so expensive, it's like throwing money out the window because of how the amortization schedules are set up to suck out their profit first and then apply to your principal next. Something like that.
Your principles, and then your principles an afterthought.
Exactly. You don't actually get any benefit. You don't get any traction with your loan until you're 11, 12, 15, whatever it is in a 30-year loan, right? That's when you actually start paying principal down more than just pennies.
Yeah. Well, and the key is everybody refinances, right? I mean, I didn't get into all this, but everybody, if you're not moving after every 5 years, the point where anybody can pull out $2,000 or $3,000 on their loan and rates drop a fraction of a point, they're all refinancing and resetting the debt clock, and it's like it's suicide. I mean, it's insanity.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, so my personal take, and of course I didn't say this, but my personal take is it's always better to get the 30-year note and then just pay down the debt, which is what I did.
You can, yeah. We talk about that in the book. We talk about the problem. The problem comes with, Daniel. I mean, you obviously are at the top of your field, right? I mean, you're a success story. Not everybody has the financial discipline that you have.
I know that to be the case as well.
A lot of people.
I always pay $200 and $300 a month on principal and above my 30-year loan, and I did pay off my mortgages. So now I've got several properties paid off free and clear.
Good, that's great. That's great. Well, you've obviously got a thriving, successful business too, which gives you additional free cash flow, I'm sure, to make the payments and so forth. And when you're talking about your average paycheck to paycheck worker, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, obviously, as well as a professional, whereas, your average paycheck to paycheck worker is like a lot of, and we talk about all of this in the book. I'll give you an example. Somebody who makes, who's a secretary, administrative assistant, they might, have a $25,000 a year job and say they lose their job because their firm closes. They're not out looking for a $50,000 a year job. They're out looking for a job that's like, can I get $26,000 as a secretary? And what that does is, that's kind of like what I call this like glass ceiling mindset, where, it doesn't occur to them that they can, make so much more money simply by looking, simply by asking. It's like we all get into this paycheck to paycheck mentality, and it's really hard to break out of. So yeah, the 30-year note, I mean, if you are going to be committed to, I could hand you a 30-year loan. The banker gives you a 30-year loan, and I'll give you a 10-year amortization schedule for whatever that loan is. And if you make that loan, even though it's cast as a 30-year loan, 10 years you're out. And if you have the discipline to do that, you can do that. If a quote unquote emergency arises, you can do that also.
So what I'm saying though, Robert, is for each of your main points in this book that you would be asked about, you need a quotable soundbite that anytime somebody asks you about it, regardless of how you're going to actually answer the question, well, yes, but let me first tell you blah, 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 if it's not apropos. So get your sound bites for each one of the major points in your book so that when you're interviewed like this, you're ready with that, and they come off, because you have a people have very short attention spans,
Sure.
and you want, and if they've given you the honor of their time by watching a video or listening to a podcast, you've got to deliver the goods like now. And I have, by the way, I am not perfect with this myself. I mean, I intellectually know it, but delivering it is even difficult for me. I'm just saying that if you could work on those sorts of sort of nuggets for each one of your talking points, that's 2-3 sentences max, that gets out your entire message for that point. And then, yes, you can go back and put a finer point on things.
I understand.
But that's the first thing out of your mouth to answer the question.
And it's the same thing every time. If I'm on CNN or NBC, it's the same thing.
Same thing every time.
Okay.
Same thing every time. Okay, so can I ask you about working with bestseller builders?
Absolutely. Right. And I hope I haven't done a poor job of our interview time. I've been excited to be here. I'm sorry if I just ramble. I'm so excited about the book, and
Yeah, I asked if it was cool if I can give you feedback. So I can give feedback to everyone. So
no, I appreciate it, Daniel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
You're special, but not special. I mean, I right before you, I interviewed a USA Today best-selling author, and I basically could have told her the same exact things I just told you.
Okay.
So don't feel bad. I'm trying to make you better. I'm trying to help you sell more books. I'm trying to help you get your message out to a wider community. This is a very friendly forum, right? That's why we do this, so that you can get the interview, you can get some promotion on Book Lovers TV, but I could also actually help you or try to help you. Yeah, that's what they are. All right. So let's talk about. Can you describe a little bit of your experiences with working with bestseller builders?
Yeah, and bestseller builders is, I always call it new shelves, but it's really the same company, right? What we're talking about, like the experience with Amy Collins is
correct. Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. Like most authors, I entered into the world of publishing. I say publishing, of writing, in the hopes that I would get accepted by a major publishing house. And as I did get accepted by a publishing house, but the experience that I had been having was really, really poor. Just the way that they were handling the manuscript, they weren't really giving it the attention that it needed. But when I ran into Amy Collins at Bestseller Builders, she was able to address all of the concerns that I was having with my current publishing house, and tell me exactly what I needed to do. The direction that the book needed to go based on it being nonfiction. She took the manuscript. She spent a week with it. It was an amazing experience. And to tell you the truth, while I had so many questions getting into the world of publishing, working with bestseller builders has made me feel, just since the inception of our business relationship up until this interview, that I was not only in the right hands, but I was being taken in the right direction, flowing downstream. And it was an extremely smooth process. I've been exceptionally pleased with it. And I would absolutely do it again with my next book. It was very, very positive.
Man, thank you so much for saying that, because we do pride ourselves on, we do sort of hand select our clients. Not everyone makes it in, because we have to see that you have potential, and you obviously do. What results, if any, can you report from working with bestseller builders?
Well, we're very, very fortunate that we're in the middle of what Amy, who has been my lead person with bestseller builders, has called a soft launch, where we have been very cautious about getting the manuscript out and letting people know, just in terms of the proofing, the editing, the painstaking work that it goes into, is also been very, very, very a methodical process, which I have greatly appreciated. And one of the greatest results was getting my first proof manuscript a few days ago in the mail and seeing it. I didn't even hold it. I let my wife open it and seeing the smile on my wife's face. It has been a long journey of just writing the book and then making sure it was perfect and getting it into the hands of bestseller builders and watching them from the cover design to getting the ISBN numbers to getting the foreword by Robert Sheeman in place, communicating with all of the other entities, the dedication page, the thank you page, the epilogue, the prologue, all of these things put together, the layout, and then seeing it in physical format, seeing it in digital format, seeing it on Amazon, watching my Facebook blow up with people who are like, "Oh, I just bought your book. I just ordered 10 copies for my office." It's been a whirlwind of a week, and in retrospect, I knew I was in great hands the whole time, compared to the experience I had with my first publishing house, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. I feel like I was very, very, very fortunate to meet bestseller builders, and had I not, I'm sure I would have not only been foundering with my previous publishing house. I'm not sure the book would even be at market, or if it had been brought to market, I think it would have been done in such a shoddy fashion. I would have been very disappointed. Bestseller Builders has been an exceptional experience for me in the publishing industry, and I would encourage anybody thinking about working with them to absolutely go ahead and do it. You'd be foolish not to.
Wow, wow, thanks. That high praise indeed. So really, what you're saying too is that we took you from manuscript to this gorgeous book here, which this is the first time I'm seeing this cover, and I'm like, holy cow! I didn't. I thought, wow, this is quite a cover.
It's great, right? And I didn't. I will say this. I always had a vision for the cover, and it was. I'll try to describe it to you. It was like that logo, but in kind of a gray embossing, and then, the cover would either be like gray or orange, and with like two white pinstripes in the border. Then say the short-term retirement program. But the theme colors have always been gray and white. And Amy at Bestsellers was like, yeah, like gray and white and orange. Orange is one of the big colors that we use. And she's like, those are like the like in colors right now. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I sent her my logo, and she was like, I love this logo. But she had that logo touched up by Vicky Fitch, who she introduced me to, and they put that together. And when it came back, I was like, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
you should definitely be proud of this book. I mean, no fooling. This is a really see people because people do in fact judge the book by the cover.
right,
You see a book that's really well done cover. You're going to give the book the benefit of the doubt if there was a doubt, right?
right.
And of course, the opposite is also true. You see a book that it could be the great book, shitty cover. It's like meh.
Yeah, no, totally. And what's interesting is I don't know if you'll ever get a physical copy in your hand. I hope you do. Um, but when you take the weight and the heft of the book with it's like 7 inches by like it's not quite 7 by 10, but it's a similar permutation of that. Um, and the heft and the weight and then the matte finish of the cover, it like feels really good in your hands, and it's like it's a really special piece. And of course, if you ever do see the book, you start to flip through it, you see all the amortization tables I painstakingly put in there, the Excel charts and graphs that like demonstrate all the mathematical examples, the formulas. It's been laid out so nicely. I really am proud of the book, Daniel, and
Yeah, you
that's
should be. You should
yeah,
be proud of this book. Oh,
yeah,
that's another thing that I'm glad you mentioned that. When you're going back to the interview, so I'm back in teaching mode. Okay,
okay,
something that I remembered. When and I got to jump because I have another interview right in a couple minutes.
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
people really don't buy. You know, so don't try to sell tables and graphs and things like that. That's like yawn boring. Okay.
Okay.
What you want to do instead is you want to say, we have the exact resources in this book that give you the step-by-step details on blah 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 blah. You know, what some ultimate benefit that they get out of reading that chapter or that table or whatever that is. Okay, so it's like it's almost impossible to sell work, Robert. Okay, and that sounds like work.
Okay.
So keep that in mind when you're doing interviews. It's great that they're in the book. I'm sure the book needs it, but frame it in a different way.
It's like it has all the tools and components or something like that.
All the tools, the resources, because that's what those are. Those are resources that you put in this book, so that they can understand the situation. They can understand, more importantly, how to get out of that situation by using these tools. So yes, there's so that's the way you put that.
Daniel, I just want to thank you so much for your generous use of your time today. I've really gotten a lot out of it, and I hope.
Oh, good. I'm glad, man. And I want to see that. I want to see you and this book really do well.
Do you think we will?
I think you will.
Thank you. Will you send me a link? When is this going to be on? I can't wait to show it, and I'll link it to Facebook and all that.
Well, it's going to be on Roku, so you're not going to be able to link it to Facebook. Other than, well, no, I think you can't. But you could take a screenshot of it and put it up. It'll be probably 3 weeks before it goes live.
You just send me a link or something to.
Yeah. I'll tell you when it's on Roku. You could actually go install the Book Lovers TV channel right now.
Okay, great. I'll do it when I get home tonight. I'm obviously at the office right now.
It's free. It's a free channel.
Great, and I'm about halfway through a second manuscript. I've told Amy that I'd like to do that too, with you guys. So hopefully we can continue to work together. And I want to thank you so much. I know you work with many fledgling.
Thank you. No, we really appreciate you. Hey, I'm here to serve you, not the other way around, man.
Well, hopefully we'll win togetgether, right?
Absolutely, that's the name of the game. I gotta cut. Thanks, Robert.
Okay, man. Thank you so much. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye now.